Well, you should have known the NFL was going to try to push back as hard as possible against Jim Trotter after he dropped his 53-page lawsuit yesterday accusing the NFL of racial discrimination. Already, Jerry Jones, the owner of the Cowboys, says no. What I'm quoted as saying in this lawsuit simply just did not happen. Terry Pegula, the owner of the Buffalo Bills, who said that black players did not like it. They should go back to Africa. Also responding, as well as Roger Goodell, the NFL commissioner, all responding. And folks are not at all happy with Jim Trotter. I'm sure he doesn't care they're not happy. He's speaking his truth. He joins us right now, right here, Roland Martin Unfiltered. Jim, welcome back. You sure shaking these folks up?
Well, perhaps they need to be shaken up, Roland. You know, it's funny. You know, Jerry Jones didn't deny it. He just said it was misrepresented. And the statement that he put out, I think, misrepresents what happens. He said he was talking to Will McClay, which is untrue. I was speaking to Will McClay about why HBCU players weren't drafted when Jerry Jones walked up. Jerry and Will never had a conversation during the time that I was there. And then, in fact, later in the conversation with Jerry, Will walked away. So I look forward to the day that we get to the point we get to discovery and what each side is able to turn over what they have and research, you know, the claims that are made. I look forward to that moment.
Roger Goodell said, quote, "Their allegations, our job is to make sure that they're factual. These are not new charges. They're actually a couple of years old. They've been looked into. You've heard the strong denials. There's litigation ongoing now. It will be addressed because these are important issues and we share the same concerns. We want to make sure our workplaces are first class and it means opportunities for everybody. We know the importance of progress and diversity and we're working very hard at it. Is progress where we want it to be? No, it's always slower than you want it to be, but I'm confident we're moving in the right direction." Here's what stood out for me right there, Jim, when he said that these are important issues and we share the same concerns. Has he articulated that to other NFL employees, including the people at the NFL Network?
Have you looked at the flow chart of NFL executives to see if they're really concerned about the issue of diversity, equity, and inclusion? We included it in the lawsuit. You're not going to see many black faces there. So, look, Roland, can I say this? Look, and in some ways I'm being a little glib here, but let me get serious for a moment. This lawsuit is a discrimination claim wrapped around a retaliation claim. And the retaliation claim here is what really people should be focusing on. So during my final 2 years in particular at the NFL Network, the NFL said it wanted employees to hold it accountable as it related to diversity, equity, and inclusion. And so I took that seriously. And so within our newsroom, where we cover a player population that according to league data is 60 to 70% black, we do not have, or we did not have, one black manager, one black copy editor, or one full-time black news assistant. So my questions to them is, how can we credibly cover this player population when these players do not have one person who shares their cultural experiences or their life experiences at the table when decisions are being made about how to cover them and who will cover them and what the story angles will be? And I know people have heard me ask Roger Goodell about this the last 2 years or the last two Super Bowls. But what they don't know is that internally, I had been bringing these things up for those 2 years to everyone involved, including at that time, the head of the NFL media group, who every summer we would have what we call a talent summit, where they would bring in people from the media group to discuss where the NFL is and where it is going for the coming season. And during those 1.5 days in Los Angeles, we would have breakout groups. And in one of the breakout groups, they would have front-facing talent meet with the head of the NFL media group at that time, Mark Quinzel. And it just so happened that in June of 2022, Hans Schroeder from the league office, one of the executive vice presidents, was also there. And so I said to Mark Quinzel, we're allowed to ask you anything we want, right? And you're going to answer honestly. He said, yes. I said, okay, I just heard you a minute ago in the large room patting the league on the back and the media group on the back about improvements in diversity, equity, and inclusion. And up on the stage with you were 3 white men, no one else. I said, I didn't see anyone who looked like me. I said, we have not had a black manager in the newsroom since I got here, and this is my 5th year. I said, nor do we have a full-time black news assistant. And he stopped me and he said, wait a minute, yes, we do. And I said, no, we don't have a full-time black news assistant. And he said to me, I walk through the newsroom every day. I see them. Yes, we do. And at that point, Hans Schroeder tried to interject. And I said to him, no, Hans, excuse me, I need an answer from Mark on this. And I said to him, Mark, if you give me one name of one full-time black news assistant, I will drop this and never ask about it again. And his response to me was, he paused and he said, I can't think of it right now, but I'll get back to you. And that said all I needed to know. You're telling me the head of the news organization says he walks through the newsroom, sees these people, know we have them employed, and yet he can't name one and never did name one. I'm still waiting for him to get back to me. So I take this very seriously in that. And so when I asked the commissioner 2 Super Bowls ago, he said that they had fallen short, that they were going to investigate, they were going to review all of their practices, policies, and procedures, and try to improve. And a year later, when I asked him the exact same question when there was no change, he basically gave the same answer again, that they would investigate it, they would look at all of the practices, policies, and procedures and look to improve. So how serious are you about this if that for 2 years I have been asking you about this and there has been no change? That's why when I say there's a retaliation claim, it's asking those questions, and then my agent meets with the vice president of talent in November and says to her, hey, Jim's contract is up in March. We just want to get a head start on this. What are you thinking? She says, we see no reason that we won't bring him back. Everybody loves Jim. She said, now it may come with a pay trim because we're reducing budget, but there is no reason to think that he won't be brought back. That is in mid-November. Fast forward to February, when I asked Roger Goodell that question again, and then the next day, my supervisor asked one of my colleagues, why does Jim keep bringing this up? We have a diverse newsroom. And then 3 weeks later, I meet with Sandy Nunes again, the VP of talent, and she asked me, am I in alignment with the newsroom? And I said to her, no, I can't be in alignment with a newsroom that doesn't have black representation. And that is when she said, that's what I thought. And she said, sometimes you have to compromise. And I told her, I've compromised an awful lot here. And I ran down the examples, several of them. And I told her, the one thing I'm not going to compromise on is my integrity. And then I said, I want to be clear here. Are you now saying to me that my contract is not going to be renewed? And she said, I don't know. It's being discussed. 3 weeks later, they called my agent and told him it wasn't being renewed.
What trips me out is you're a reporter. So for you to continue to press them on the reality of the newsroom, they act like you can't do research. And so to say, oh, no, Jim, you're wrong. No, I see it. And then when you're like, okay, fine, give me a name. Just say, all right,
one.
Give me a name.
Just one.
Full-time person. And they haven't. They simply can't. And I love what your attorneys actually said in this, where they said that, oh, guess what? Jim is not like the players. Something goes down. Ain't no arbitration forced mediation. No, we want to take this to a jury.
Yep. No, and that's, the one thing that's positive here. They can't push us off to arbitration like they've done with Brian Flores in many of the aspects of his case. So, the disappointing thing here is, Roland, I really tried to work internally for positive change. And yet I raised these concerns particularly say to the commissioner, do you think that anyone from the league office ever got back to me over that year and a half? Not one person ever reached out to me and said, let's have a conversation about this and see what we can do. And the frustrating part here is not only were they making, unwilling to address this issue within the newsroom, when it came to our reporting, we simply weren't allowed, or I wasn't allowed. I'm a columnist. I'm supposed to give my informed opinion on things. And when I tried to, if it was negative or if it was going to be critical of owners of the league office, I had to go out of my way to both sides of the issue to be able to run the story. And so that became very difficult because I said to them at one point, I feel like I'm losing my voice. Like I can't say what I want to say because you all are going to make me go get another side, another aspect of this, or get the other side of this. And it doesn't matter that in one instance I was quoting a half dozen former black coaches about something that took place. And then they're saying to me, well, we need a comment from Paul Tagliabue in this. And I would say, why do we need a comment from Paul Tagliabue? These men are giving their experiences about what happened. This is their story. Well, no, Paul might remember it differently. And that's when I told them, why are we continuing to both sides of these issues? Lastly, I'll say this in terms of coverage, and I can give you stories where the league put its thumb on coverage of things that were taking place. But when I interviewed for the job, I was concerned about this. And so I said to Mark Quinzel, how do you all handle it when there is a controversial story regarding the owners or the league? And Mark Quinzel said to me, we will always report the news. We might not opine on it, but we will report it. And I said, cool, that's all I needed to hear. I just want to know that we will report the news. In my naivete, what I found out is what that meant is if outside news sources knew about something controversial and they were reporting on it as it relates to the league office or the owners, we would report it. But if we knew about it and no one on the outside knew, then we weren't going to report it. And that goes back to the alleged comment to Terry Pegula, which a colleague of mine made during a Zoom call with 40 plus other members of the newsroom on that call. And then my comments or my interaction with Jerry Jones, where I have the text messages where I was told to stand down. So they can say what they want and they can say that they're an independent arm and all of that stuff. They are not. When it comes to players, when it comes to coaches, when it comes to teams, general managers, yes, they're all fair game. When it comes to owners or the league office, that's a completely different matter.
You talked about Terry Pegula making that comment. He issued this statement here. The statement attributed to me in Mr. Trotter's complaint is absolutely false. I am horrified that anyone would connect me to an allegation of this kind. Racism has no place in our society, and I am personally disgusted that my name is associated with this complaint.
Roland, let's be clear here. A lot of people don't read. They read headlines and don't read stories, or they don't read lawsuits. And I've seen where people have attributed this comment, this quote, to me, as if Terry Pegula said it to me. Again, this quote came from an NFL Network reporter on a Zoom call with 40 of us. And when this reporter told the group about this comment, this alleged comment, business went on as usual. We got to the end of the Zoom call and no one said anything about it. And I raised my hand and I said, hold on, before we go, are we not going to address what we just heard here? And I was told by our managers, this is the first we're hearing of it. We want to talk to the reporter and we will go from there. I said, cool. I checked back in a day or two later. I was told that New York was made aware of it and New York was investigating it. Every week or so, every other week, I would ask, where are we at on this? Where are we at on this? And over a course of more than months, I was finally told, I have an answer for you and you're not going to like it. And I said, well, what's the answer? And I was told the answer is, they said it's an HR matter and that's it. And I said, oh, so you're telling me it's going to be swept under the rug? And I was told, I'm just telling you what I was told. And that was it for the Pegula investigation. And remember, this is the same owner who, when he sat down with members of the Player Coalition to talk about a partnership between the Players Coalition and the NFL, and he was talking about the public relations aspect and said to the players, we need a black face to be the front of this. So is it really a stretch to believe that Pegula might have said something like this? It is not in my mind.
Let's go to my panelist, Torun. Your question for Jim Trotter.
Hello, Jim. My question is this. We've seen the way the NFL moves when we have these racial disputes in that league, with Colin Kaepernick, with Eric Reed and others, and now yourself. My question is, do you think there's a possibility for your case to move forward if you use the angle of what the league says out of its mouth and then the way it actually moves when it comes to these issues of racism, especially anti-Black racism?
Well, it's interesting you say that, and thanks for the question. Roland will know this. In my question to Commissioner Goodell at the last Super Bowl, I said to him, James Baldwin says, I can't believe what you say because I see what you do. And so there is no question we will be pointing out how the NFL says one thing and does something different. Look, the reality here is that the NFL has a long and troubled history as it relates to race and the league. We can go back to the 1930s and 40s where blacks were literally banned from the league for a dozen years. We can move on to, the 50s, 60s, and 70s where we weren't allowed to play certain positions because they said they were thinking man's positions and they felt that we couldn't handle those positions. You can go on from there to where we didn't have a black coach until much later. We didn't have the first black general manager until the 2000s. Then we can move forward to recent years where we can talk about the use of race norming and trying to settle cases in the concussion settlement, and then we go on now to the fact that there are only three head coaches who identify as black in a league of 32 teams. So the league has had a troubled history with race for almost as long as it has been in existence. And so when I bring these things up, it is to express this culture within the NFL that seems to have a problem not only with black people, but in particular, black men. One of the things we tried to get from the league, or I tried to get from the league even when I was there, were the promotion and retention rate for blacks within the league. And my understanding from sources that I had talked to in there is that those numbers are extremely low for blacks. And not surprisingly, I couldn't get that data from the league. Hopefully we will be able to get that once we get to discovery. But that is an issue when you talk to employees there. It's not just me. When you talk to the Black Engagement Network there, the employees talk about this feeling that there is no ladder to promotion within the company. And again, when you go back and you look at that flow chart of the top executives in the NFL, as one of those 11 top executives said to me, only two people of color. And that's Troy Vincent, the head of football operations, and that's Daisha Smith, who, for lack of a better title, oversees human resources and their chief diversity officer, if you will. So for me, that reflects what's going on in the NFL. They can tell us that they can put things like end racism in the end zone, and they can play the Blacks national anthem before games, and they can bring in Jay-Z to help with halftime shows. But what we're talking about here is something more substantive, and that's the fact that we need to see action and see people in positions of authority within the league where we don't see it right now.
Rebecca.
Thank you.
Jim, first I want to say thank you. Thank you for filing this lawsuit because it's very important and it's also very courageous. I mean, it's wild that the league just ended race norming, which is a clear demonstration of the undervaluing and the devaluing of Black lives, especially with Black men. You need full community support, full stop. So what do you need from the community, both materially and strategically? And how can we support you in this endeavor?
Wow, that's a great question. And to be honest with you, I hadn't given it a lot of thought. My whole thought process has been, and I'm being as honest as I can be here. For me, it was, I can't keep complaining about these things if I'm unwilling to take a stand and fight for what's right. And I'm 60 years old, and I don't have a lot of years left in this business, and I understand that. My kids are grown and out of the house. I've done fairly well financially, been able to put away some money. And so if I am in this position where I can take a stand and I can fight this fight, and I don't, I have no reason to complain. And my focus is now on, I tell you, I mean this from the heart, is trying to make this better for those who come in behind me, so that hopefully that door is open a little bit wider, and hopefully we have newsrooms that are a little more reflective of the communities that they cover. And so to get to your question, I'm not quite sure. The community has been great to this point in terms of public support. But I also think, as I've talked to people before, the thing that speaks to the NFL is dollars and cents. And so at some point, as long as we keep running to that television like Pavlov's dogs on Sunday, when that whistle blows, it's not going to matter. There is a sense of arrogance within the NFL that it can do whatever it wants because the numbers in terms of the popularity are so high. When you look at the top 100 live TV shows last year, I think 82 of them were NFL related. The year before, I think it was 70 something. And so what history has shown them is no matter how much we screw this up, the people are still there to watch it. The numbers are still there. And so somehow, in my opinion, it has to be either through litigation or financial consequences that the NFL responds. That history has shown us that those are the only two ways that substantive change takes place in the NFL.
But here's the deal, Jim. It's not just the NFL. That's anything. Right. I mean, we can go through. I mean, look, they hate negative attention. They hate when you shine a light. You know, Ida B. Wells talked about that, or the truth is shine light upon them. So they hate when they are on the receiving end. But then the other thing is, this is America. You got to hit folks in their pocketbook. And when
Roland, can I say this to you?
NFL, there are a lot of people. Yeah, go ahead.
No, I don't think they care about negative attention. I really don't. Because if they did, there are too many things that they have done that fly in the face of that logic. I think they believe that they have a product that is so strong and that we are so addicted to it that, again, they can do whatever they wish. And when the heat gets a little hot...
Well, here's what I mean. Here's what I mean. What they do is when they get the negative attention, then they use their money to paper it over.
Absolutely.
So,
absolutely.
Oh, we're going to support the players and we're going to give this here. Or, to your point, input in racism. Oh, the national anthem. Oh, we're going to have the Grambling band perform at the Las Vegas Raiders game. And then, the partnership with Jay-Z. And so now people are talking about, Rihanna halftime and 50 Cent and Dr. Dre and Snoop and all that sort of stuff along those lines. And so they use that power. But the thing here, and what I was about to say, when Colin Kaepernick sued them, a lot of people were hopeful that was going to go forward to reveal what they discovered. Well, they eventually settled for some $8 million. And so the thing here is, and again, people don't, if they look at your lawsuit, on that first page, you and your attorneys are saying, we want this to be a jury trial. What that says to me is, we're not going to settle. We want everything out in the open and on the record for the world to see what they did. Correct?
Absolutely. I've always said I want it out in the open and on the record. And the good thing for us, Roland, is that I don't have an arbitration clause in my contract, or I did not. And so therefore, they can't push us to arbitration and let Roger Goodell be judge, jury, and executioner there. So at this point, as has been explained to me by my attorneys, yes, this should all be done out in the public and in the open, and for everyone to know exactly what transpired, who said what, when, all these sorts of things. So we'll see where it goes from here. Look, I've never been through this process before. This is a first for me. This as a journalist, we were taught to report the news, to not be the news. So this is a little uncomfortable being on this side of it. But I just felt that it was too important not to go forward with this. again, because if they can do this, and when I say this, I'm not in any way trying to make myself bigger than I am. But if they can do this to me, meaning someone who is established and someone who has worked hard over the last 3 decades to build a reputation of credibility and integrity in this league and to try and do things the right way, and if they can try and silence me in this way, then what are they going to do others whose resume might not be to the point that mine is at this point, which is not to say that the individual can't get there, but just what's to say that they can't do it to them? And they send a message to these folks that, look, if you get out of line or you challenge us, the same can happen to you. So I've had people say to me, are you concerned about your career? All of these type things. And I'm going to tell you this, and again, I'm being as honest as I can be. When I lay my head down on the pillow at night, regardless of what happens here, I know that I did this for the right reasons, and I'm willing to accept the end result, whatever it may be.
You know, Jim, one of the things that I've talked about is that I've always, and I coined a phrase that drives me crazy, parking lot militants. And that's other black folks, other people of color who will, you know, you might be in the parking lot, you might be at home, and they'll be venting on the phone, and then, you know, text message. Then when you go back into the building, you sort of like say something, then you look around and like, where did all y'all go? And the reality is, it takes courage to put it all on the line. And there are a lot of people who look like us who are going to stay silent, who are happily going to collect those checks, and they'll be like privately, yeah, Jim, yeah, go right ahead. And you're like, but where were you? Why aren't you saying anything? What you know, hey, can I get some backup in this? And the reality is, in history shows, it's a lonely existence when you decide to go down this path.
Yeah, no, you're right. And you and I have had this discussion before. And I brought this up to a couple of other close friends. And what one said to me is, look, we have Malcolms and we have Martins. And sometimes they, you know, you're one or the other. And
here's why that phrase pisses me off. Because one, anybody who said that is full of crap. Because the reality is, Malcolm and Martin were more alike than they were different. They had different styles.
Right.
But Martin was radical. Martin was radical. Malcolm was radical as well. Martin was challenging. That's why I keep saying I'm tired of MLK Day and they want to flip it to a day of service. No, it should be a day of protest. No, the difference is there were people who were silent when Martin and others were putting it on the line, and they were sitting here, oh, yeah, no, I don't want to get involved, but then wanted to come behind and reap the benefits of their labor.
Man, Roland, you trying to get me in trouble here. I'm trying to be good. I'm gonna say this to you.
The show is called Unfiltered.
I feel you, but you know, I got a lawsuit going on here. I'm gonna say this to you.
I understand.
I'm gonna say this to you. Let me just put it this way. It has not gone unnoticed to me who I have heard from since I filed this lawsuit and who I have not heard from. And I will just leave it at that. But you know what? At the same time, I cannot let that stop me from what I'm trying to accomplish here. And you know this. When we were at NABJ back in August, and, you know, my wife was there with me and whatnot, and it was one of the few times she had been at an event like this and whatnot. And, you know, after it was over and people want to come up and talk to you and those sorts of things. And I was busy with a few folks, and there were some young journalists who wanted to talk but felt a little intimidated. And so they were waiting, and then they were going to leave feeling like I wouldn't have time for them. And my wife told them, no, stay. And so when it was all over, she said to me, you know, you really made an impact on these young people. And at the end of the day, that's what this is all about, right? Trying to make this better for them,
Yep.
you know, and trying to show them
Yep.
that there's a way. And so when my wife told me that, I'm not going to lie to you. I mean, that just inspired me to go forward, or made me even more resolute in what I was doing, to say that this is that important, you know, and I don't want to make it more than what it is and all that sort of stuff. But from a personal standpoint, what little bit I can do in my corner of the world, it is important for me to fight this fight.
Oh, it is, and I think people need to understand that whether you're fighting it by filing a lawsuit, whether you're fighting it by asking those questions publicly, whether you're fighting it by literally challenging folks inside of those newsrooms, it matters. Look, like I remember, I made it clear. I knew in my 6 years at CNN that I was not going to personally benefit for the advocacy that I was involved in.
Absolutely. Yep.
And I remember when they promoted a couple of people, and then the black anchors, and I'll say it, Suzanne Malveaux and Frederica Whitfield and T.J. Holmes and Don Lemon, they were all upset, and they wanted to meet with the bosses, and they had a conversation with a black exec in New York, and she said to them, they ain't meeting with y'all unless Roland and Soledad in the room. And they were like, well, you know, Roland's too radical. And she said, do you understand that brother's taking a whole bunch of arrows? And she said, y'all are going to benefit from the stuff that he's doing. And what ended up happening was I demanded a meeting with the top leadership. They agreed to it, Jim. But then they went, no. So we want to meet separately with you from them because they're full-time and you're not. I started laughing by saying, okay, I got an office in New York. I got a CNN phone. I got business cards, got all of that. Are y'all serious? And then I said I wasn't going to meet with them. But then when I did, I said I want the worldwide CEO there. I want the CNN, the number 2 there, the head of sales, the head of HLN. And somebody was like, you just making demands? I said, no, I wanted them to understand that if we were going to meet, we were going to meet. And I challenged them point blank. And what I say to people is, look, I get it. I get the whole deal of it's a job, and for many of us, we've never had jobs that pay this amount of money. It provides a level of security for our family. But it's what you said about those young people, and that is somebody has to fight the fight today, so someone tomorrow doesn't have to.
Absolutely. Absolutely. You know, you made me think of something when you were talking about that meeting. So at the NFL, they have the Black Engagement Network, right, which is a group of Black employees throughout the company and whatnot. And there was an opening at one point for one of the leadership positions, I think 1 or 2 leadership positions. And so I remember asking a person who had been a part of the group for a long time before I got there and whatnot. And I said, I think I want to run for one of those positions, because in that position, you talk directly with the leadership at the NFL in New York. And it still sticks with me. I will never forget this person said to me, no, you'll be better off as a consultant rather than a leadership position. And when I asked why, basically cutting to the chase, it was that I was too direct and I was considered too antagonistic, I guess you could say, to be dealing with the New York office. And you know, that really hurt a little bit, Roland, because I'm like, I'm out here fighting for us. And, you know, and you're going to tell me that we got to be, you know, go in and be, you know, can we all just get along and whatnot? So I'll tell you a story, true story. So they said we were going to have a town hall meeting, virtual town hall meeting with the commissioner. And I remember that, you know, Black employees were complaining about the lack of promotions and retention because we were losing a lot of Black employees and they weren't being promoted. So I said to a couple of people in the group, I said, look, if we really want to make a statement to Roger Goodell and the NFL, I said, when they have that town hall meeting, I said, no Black person show up. I said, that would get their attention and let them know that we are serious about this. Didn't happen. I didn't show up, but others did. So I'm like, you can't, there is no progress without sacrifice. And that's the thing that people have to remember here. Like, people aren't just going to do things for you out of the goodness of their hearts. Like, you have to hold them accountable.
The reason I'm sitting here laughing because I literally was text messaging some folks with the Texas A&M Black Former Student Network. We have an annual Aggie Impact Gala, and they sent me an email because as the honoree in the first year, they offer you free tickets. And I said, is it going to be held on the campus? And they said, yes. I said, there's no way in hell I'm going to attend. Then I was told that a vote was taken and a decision was made that let's not rock the boat in this moment. And I said, well, if there's any moment to rock the boat, it is this after what they did to a black graduate named Kathleen McElroy. And so I was on a text and I was explaining to the people last night, and I said, they were like, well, what could we really do? I said, do you understand what would happen if you publicly say that one, if you do go to College Station, you say we're not going to have it on campus. We're going to specifically go to a black-owned location. Or you say we're going to hold it in Houston or Dallas. I said, but you have to use whatever power or leverage that you have in order to get their attention. I just think that what happens is, again, I go back to the parking lot militant. It's a lot of people who whine and complain, who say we need to see stuff change, but when it's time to fight, very few show up for the fight. Everybody who claims they marched for Dr. King is a flat-out liar. Most of these people are lying. They didn't. But history also records that when things did happen that benefited black people, it was because at least one person had the courage to stand up. If you are a professional player today, you should be going to bed thanking God every night for Curt Flood. Even though he lost his case, Curt Flood is the reason you have free agency. But somebody has to be willing to stand up and do what's right. And so, Jim, we're glad that you did. You know where I stand. Absolute support you. I have told NABJ that they were dead wrong in not giving the NFL Network and the NFL the thumbs down award. I said, don't just award Jim Journalist of the Year, but then you don't call out his employer. I made that clear to the previous president, Dorothy Tucker, and I've said to the new president, Ken Lemon, that NABJ should be far more aggressive when it comes to this. And I don't care how much money the NFL Network spends at our annual convention. Our job is to advocate for black journalists, even when it makes folk uncomfortable.
I would just ask, Roland, people not forget here, the NFL Network covers a player population that is 60 to 70% black. And there is not one black manager, one black copy editor, or one full-time black news assistant in that newsroom. And in fact, if you took out all of the reporters, there is only one full-time black employee in that newsroom. That's damning. And that's something that's worth fighting against.
Absolutely. Jim Trotter, I appreciate it, my brother. Thanks so much. Good luck.
I appreciate you, Roland.